Welcome to Seymour's World, where we are opening minds and facilitating conversations. My name is Seymour Kazimirski. Thank you for joining us today. A little comment about last week's show. I had a lot of emails and a lot of texts about Dr. Eric Acco and his idea that the veterinary medicine practice is reasonably priced here in Hawaii. And I have to tell you, that is open for discussion, and Eric is going to be coming back to talk with us later, possibly this fall, and we will address each of the items that you had sent me in your notes so that we can give you the assurance that veterinary medicine is truly affordable. The key for his whole talk with us was the pet insurance business, how important it is for you to have your pets insured, because there's no doubt that veterinary medicine, just as human medicine, is going to go up in cost. So we'll put that to bed for now, and I will answer all your questions, I promise, sometime this fall with Dr. Eric Acco. Today, we are extremely fortunate to have a young man that I have known for about 10 years. His name is Jordan Kandell. Welcome, Jordan. Thank you for joining us today. Jordan was my son's tutor. And prior to me knowing Jordan as my son's tutor, I knew his parents because when I had the New York Deli, I know I'm dating myself now, we're in the mid-70s, 76 to 1980, I knew his parents very well. And so Jordan came around to my life in helping Aaron getting into college when he was at Mid-Pac. And he did a fabulous job of trying to get Aaron to relax and to try to be himself and get his grades up to make it into college. But that's not why we're here talking to Jordan. I put the byline for this subject today, Hawaii Goes Hollywood. And the reason I did that is because this young man and his brother have a business in writing and screenwriting that has truly done an amazing thing for two guys in Hawaii. So Jordan, if you could tell us a little bit about you and your brother and how you've gotten to where you are today.
Sure, I'd be happy to, and thank you for having me on the show. It is an honor. So yeah, as far as being I can speak to the screenwriting aspect, I think, best of Hollywood, and any other questions you might have specifically regarding other elements of it, producing and whatnot. But I sort of set myself out to be a screenwriter 9 years ago, I believe, coming up on that, and yeah, it's been what I call a trek up Mount Everest ever since to very recent success. So how would you like to know how I started? Is that the question?
Yeah, because when I met you originally, you were doing writing. You and your brother were writing stories, if I recall.
I believe we were screenwriting then.
Right, and I said to you then, wow, that's tough, because you're two guys from Hawaii. How do you get known in the community here and then get known further on? So I think we should start at the beginning, just doing the writing and the screenwriting itself.
Yeah, and I think it's a good question. I would say to address that first part, we skipped being known in the community and just kind of went to Hollywood. We went to college at the University of Southern California, and we minored in screenwriting. And so we were always writing even in high school. I say we because I have an identical twin brother, just to clarify for the show, who is my writing partner. And we were always writing even in high school. We went to Iolani. And always interested, and I think leaning towards that as a career, though I think when you're a kid you don't necessarily know how you can have a career as a writer, and it is one of the harder, sort of least stable careers I could think of to recommend. But yeah, we went to USC, we were fascinated by film, and we studied screenwriting, and our major was actually creative writing and poetry. Both of us, because we're identical and we do the same thing. But we always wanted to do something together as twins, and poetry isn't necessarily the most collaborative form of writing that exists. You don't write two roads diverged in, is it a green wood, is it a yellow? Aaron comes up with that word. But one weekend, we kind of took what we were learning in our screenwriting classes, and we had this idea for a screenplay, and we said, well, let's see if we can write it. And over 3 weekends, we just kind of holed up and wrote our first script in like six days, I guess you would say. And that was just kind of it. It just clicked.
And when you wrote that script, you're two brothers. You're working together. You're identical twins. Is there fighting going on, or do you both collaborate so that your brains are all focused at the same level at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, we have sort of a special and unique dynamic, I think, to the process of writing and being a writer. You know, I have a lot of writer friends who don't have writing partners. If you're a novelist, you typically don't have a writing partner. Collaboration, as far as writing goes, really it works well in screenwriting and television writing especially, but most other forms of writing, you're typically on your own. And most of my friends who write, you know, they face this, the hardest part I find for what I've heard, because it's not my experience in writing, is facing the blank page on your own every day in a room by yourself. And that, you know, I feel fortunate is, you know, I've had the rare experience of having never had to face the blank page alone, because I have a twin brother, and we are very much sort of two heads on the same body. So two things happen in our writing process. There definitely is intense debate. We call it egoless arguing, because if you didn't know us and you heard us arguing about it, you would think that we were, you know, ready to rip each other's heads off. But it's all in the service of the story. It's never about the other person's work or the quality of it. It's just what's the best version of the story. And so we will argue endlessly until the story's right, but we have a policy where if something doesn't read right, it's not, to one of us, it's not ready, it's not right yet. So we have to continue to rewrite it until we're both happy with it. And, you know, I think that's partly a key to our success. That said, we are very much, the way we approach story, the way we approach writing is very much in line. We have the same voice. Even in that first script, you know, we had a character had a cat that we discussed. The character had a cat, and he goes into work, and he had a sidecar, and okay, we discussed he had a sidecar, but I took the first, you know, 5 pages or 10 pages. Aaron took the next. We wrote them simultaneously. And at one point I wrote, you know, the guy leaves his cat in the sidecar. It's a silly comedy. And I didn't tell Aaron that I wrote that, and then Aaron's sequence had the guy coming out of work, you know, 5 pages later, and he finds his cat, you know, asleep in the sidecar.
Oh my God.
And it just like, I was like, how did you know that I was, it just, we have those, we have those sort of connections. Let me reconnect my mic.
I think, Jordan, for those of us who basically write letters, that's the maximum that we do, or are business people who, you know, do business papers, the creativity that's required to do what you do you get it every day? Is it something that you sit down, I mean, you say you don't see a blank page because I assume your ideas are formulating in your head before you look at the blank page.
Well, you're always facing the blank page.
Okay.
I mean, there's that never goes away. I just don't have to do it in my particular unique situation by myself. But yeah, the battle is always to fill that blank page every day. And so it's a discipline, is what I would say. You can write when you're inspired, and that's the best and the most fun and the most productive time to write. But if you want to write for a living and, you know, make a living out of it, you can't wait for inspiration. You have to sit down and you have to face the page, and you have to write every day. And if you don't, you know, I think, I forget who it was, Stephen King, some famous writer, maybe, it was either Stephen King or it was Hemingway, who said, you know, if you don't write for a day, the second day is, you know, like starting over. If you don't write for a week, it's like you've never written before.
Wow.
So you really have to sit, and you gotta do it every day.
So what happened with the first script?
The first script got us our manager, our first manager, and it got us 25 really productive meetings in town that led to 2 development deals for 2 different scripts that never went anywhere.
You're saying here in Hawaii? Or
No, in LA.
In LA. So
in LA.
This was part of your first introduction to Hollywood, basically.
Yeah, we went to USC, we moved back here, and we were writing here and teaching, which is when I met you. When this script went out on market, we would fly back to LA, and that's what we still do to take meetings. That led to more work, but it was free work. It was on spec, as it's called. So they did not pay us to develop these projects. We worked at 2 different production companies, and then they never went anywhere. So there's an aspect of screenwriting where it's a bit like, they call it spec screenplays because it's like speculation when you used to go digging for gold. Maybe you'll find gold, maybe you'll find nothing, right?
But we talked about that earlier before we went on air, how every business has to go through a certain portion of risk factor, whether it's speculating, as in your business, or making a product that you don't know is going to sell and you bring it to the marketplace to see if it's going to sell. You were basically developing the foundation of your business by doing all of this speculation, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that to be a professional screenwriter, you have to be an entrepreneur as well. It's very much the same thing, where an entrepreneur might build a product and try to take that to market. My product just happens to be a story. And it's, it is a product. I am taking it to a market. I do have to convince people why it has value and why they should invest in it, and build maybe my invention or my patent into a whole creation, into something that we can sell. It's just my product is story.
Wow. So here we are, Jordan and Aaron, 2 brothers, twin brothers. You've gone through several years of doing this specking, of where you're trying to write screenplays that you hope are going to be adapted into either TV or to movies, I assume, or whatever?
Yeah, up until about a month ago, we focused on film exclusively. A month ago, we sold our first TV show, so now we're sort of expanding.
Can you tell us a little bit about the TV show?
Yeah, I can talk about the TV show sort of in its short form, probably. The TV show, let me preface it by talking about the script that our spec screenplay that we sold in October that sort of led to the TV show. We sold a spec script called The Golden Record, which is about, it's a true story about how Carl Sagan sort of met and fell in love with who became his wife of 20 years and his collaborator, Andrian, who has just re-released Cosmos, which was the show she helped write with him on PBS in 1980. It's on Fox currently. And a few years before that, they met and fell in love while working on this project called the Voyager Interstellar Mission, or the Golden Record, which was literally a golden record that was put on the Voyager spacecraft. They left the solar system in 1977, and they're, your kids, when I was in school, when you would study the solar system, all the planets, they were all those photos that you see, those famous photos, they were taken by the Voyagers as they sailed past the planets. And a few months ago, the Voyagers just left the solar system after 33 years of traveling to become the furthest flung object mankind's ever built, and the first interstellar sort of traveler, they're calling it, into the greater universe beyond our tiny solar system. Okay. So Carl Sagan in 1976 had sort of the prescience to think, if we're sending this message out into the cosmos, or this bottle, we might as well include a message in it. And so they created this, what's literally a golden record that has music, images, sounds, greetings of Earth on it, as a way of trying to embody what it means to be alive on planet Earth. And, sort of the ultimate message that Carl himself discovered through the process of creating this thing and finding and meeting who became the love of his life was that it was love. That was the message. And it was just one of the best stories we'd ever found. And so we spent 6 months of intensive journalistic research and about 2 years writing it. And in the process of writing that script and doing research into Carl, NASA at the time, this greater idea for a bigger TV show, this longer form sort of story came into play for us, and that's the show that we sold. And so that show is about NASA. Let me know if I'm going too far with story, but that show's about. It's a story of one fictional family struggling to build and maintain a legacy and a dynasty, set against the 50-year historic sweep of NASA.
Wow.
So there's 3 different time periods, each anchored by a different member of this family, and you sort of see their journey, their goals, that impossible idea of sending humans into space. These people are sort of at the front line of that in the birth of NASA in the late 50s,
Wow.
the golden age of NASA in the 80s, and kind of the uncertain future of NASA today with
right.
the scuttling of the shuttle program in 2012 and sort of where we're at moving forward.
So can you tell us which network it's on, or you're not allowed
I don't know
to?
if I can talk
No?
about
Okay, all right, okay.
where it's been sold yet.
But the idea behind it, it's a TV show that's going to come on in 2015, or when do you think they'll be starting?
Unsure. We're currently writing the pilot for it, and then we're going to take that to network. So it was bought by a studio who can finance the development of a show, and then we're going to try to get directors, actors, showrunners, all the key players attached to the show, and then take that to the bigger networks, and then they'll decide if they put it on air or not.
Now, I don't want you to feel like you're sitting on a pedestal here, but are you the first screenwriters from Hawaii that have gone this big to be able to actually have a show?
No.
Oh, really? There are
No.
some? Really?
And there are much, I would say, bigger screenwriters than us. I believe I can't remember which of the 2. There's a writing partner team, and I think one of them went to Punahou, who wrote the Hangover movies. Mm-hmm. Scott Moore, I think, is the one from here, but I can't remember. And I'd say they're probably, as far as screenwriters go, the most successful I know that came out of Hawaii. There's another writer who I think is infinitely more talented than me, currently working right now, who's a writer-director from Maui called Dustin Cretin. I forget his middle name. He did this movie, Short Term 12, last year. That was one of the highest reviewed and rated movies of the year that I highly recommend everyone see. And he is a phenomenal talent. And then, there's been very successful, there's been actors that have come out of here. There's been studio heads like Chris Lee, who, ran Columbia or TriStar for a few years. And so there has been, there is a legacy of Hawaii gone Hollywood that, we belong to.
So then your feeling of going through this education process, 9 years until from the beginning of when you started writing to where you finally got a break and somebody was buying something from you. How did you go through those 9 years? Were you? I know you were tutoring. What else were you guys doing?
Yeah, I mean, we were writing full time the whole time. We never stopped. That was always our full-time job, and everything else was sort of secondary to support our ability to do that, our lifestyle. So, yeah, we taught for a while at Punahou. We moonlight as journalists up until a few months ago, and I'm sure we may come back to it if story sort of sparks to us in the future. We've written for Hanaho quite extensively. We've written for other local publications like Hawaii Luxury and Modern Luxury, a few more national publications like Surfing Magazine and like other airline in-flight magazines. So that's a way to kind of pay the bills, but always things that are, if not related to writing, like teaching something that's related to another passion of ours that connects.
It's amazing and I'm directing this to all you young guys who come and see me and say, you don't know what you want to do after college, and you're always wondering, and it's always been a problem where you have to focus on something that you like and be willing to put the time and effort into what you want to do. And I think the lesson here that we're learning for all of you guys is that you have to be willing to put in the time, and you have to be willing to put in the effort. If you do, you have a good chance of success. And Jordan and Aaron are perfect examples of guys who have done it. In the next part of the the show, we're going to talk about and we're going to view some of the images that Jordan brought us today. And there are some other, I believe there are some other projects that you're working on that are doing very well too. So we will get back to you in a minute. My name is Seymour Kazimirski. We're at Seymour's World on ThinkTech Hawaii.
Hi, my name is Dr. Rafi. Every week, I'm right here at ThinkTech Hawaii, 3 p.m. on Mondays. My show is Borz's Bio Briefings. What do we do here? Well, we watch sperm swim, we see if they catch anybody, we check out the latest biosimilars, you know, the kind that, what was his name, the guy with the bicycle? I guess we forgot his name, but he was taking EPO and other human growth factors. We'll be talking about human growth factors. You want to know where to get some? Maybe I'll tell. Anyway, you can catch me, as I said, every week right here, Monday, 3 p.m., ThinkTech Hawaii, Dr. Rafi. You can also find me on Twitter, BioInfo Medical. Or you can catch me on Facebook, Dr. Rafael Borzi. I'll be happy to converse with you. Aloha.
Welcome back to Seymour's World. I'm Seymour Kazimirski. Today's guest is Jordan Kandell, who is a screenwriter and now a big Hollywood guy. We call the show Hawaii Goes Hollywood because he has some wonderful news to tell us about some of the projects that he's working on for Hollywood. So we started, Jordan, or we ended actually talking about what's going on in your life and how long it took to get to where you are. There are some other projects that you're working on, but before we get to those, I'd like to tell the audience a little bit about the process of what happens to make a movie and where you fit into that process.
Yeah, I mean, movies begin with the screenplay. If you're going to build a house, you know, people say the screenplay is the blueprint for the house that the architect, which I guess would be my job, creates. Without that architecture in place, without that blueprint, then you're building sort of a story by committee. You don't have a roadmap for where you're going. So, you know, many people believe and would argue, including myself, that the screenplay is one of, if not the most important parts, because it's without it, there is no story. Then you're just doing a bunch of episodes and scenes and special effects and whatnot. That said, screenwriters have often and traditionally been, even from the early days of Hollywood, sort of the lowest rung on the ladder or of the totem pole as far as acclaim, success, power in the process goes. Typically, once I finish a screenplay, then it goes to the director and the actors, the budget, the production, the army of people, the hundreds of people that go into making a movie. My role becomes much less important. I have to make sure my story works so that people can build the house off of what I did and it doesn't fall apart.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you do something like that, how many have you done and how many have been successful? Because you mentioned you had worked on several of them.
Yeah, I think at this point we're up to 12 or 13 full-length feature film screenplays. Of those, we still haven't had one produced, so it's always a long process. I mean, you hear the overnight success. There's usually 10 years behind it. I'm 9 years in, so maybe next year I'll have an overnight success and have several of my movies come out. And indeed, it looks like maybe the first one that we sold 5 years ago might finally get produced this year. But yeah, it's I've sold out of all of those maybe 4 of 12, so a third success rate.
But even then, you have to wait to decide, or somebody's going to tell you whether they're going to adapt.
Yeah,
it, right?
There's no guarantee
even
any of them
are
going to become movies.
Right.
I think that statistically, they say that getting a screenplay sold is like winning the lottery. Getting it made is like winning it twice.
Wow.
There are tens of thousands of screenplays written every year, and the amount of movies that get made, more and more, are diminishing. And so, to get your movie made, it's an incredibly steep statistical odds stacked against you, and an incredibly competitive marketplace and world that you have to navigate. So, you for sure, if you're interested in being a screenwriter, will have to deal with failure and rejection and hitting your head against the glass ceiling repeatedly for years until you finally break the ceiling and get through.
And we say the same thing in business, believe it or not.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same. I have an adage that I use for my people that I mentor, that you have to throw enough mud against the wall, and some of it's going to stick, but you got to keep doing it because you never know which one is going to do it.
Yeah.
Of all the 12 that you have written, are you telling our audience that you think one or two might actually come to fruition?
I never know. I mean, if there's one thing that I know for William Goldman, who's one of the most famous, greatest screenwriters of all time, he wrote Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and won an Academy Award. He wrote The Princess Bride. He's written tons of things. He has this famous sort of saying that in Hollywood, nobody knows anything. And it's kind of true. It's catching lightning in a bottle. You never know if it's going to work, if you're going to be able to catch it. So I don't know if my things will go forward. You hope, and you keep working. You keep working always on the next thing, and you hope it goes through. Hopefully, the first thing I wrote will happen, and hopefully, the things that I've sold, recently, will move forward as well. But I can't 100% at this say, unless they're shooting it, I can't confirm it's going to get made.
Well, we want to show our viewers, if it's okay with you, some of your website and some of the photos. So can we go ahead and tell us who we're looking at? That's obvious, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's the writing team. That's the twin brother and I. That's Aaron and me, Jordan. This is us at the Maui Film Festival, where we premiered our short film, The Happiest Man Alive, which stars Justin Chambers from Grey's Anatomy and Laverne from Laverne and Shirley and Megan Hilty, who was on Smash. It's something we did a few years ago. Just a short 10-minute fun kind of film.
Terrific.
That's us when we were little guys reading books. We were pretty avid readers, and sort of our passion for literature and writing and all of that, goes back as long as I can remember, to about second grade, when we were told to write like a one-page story, and we each wrote like a 13-page endless thing. Yeah,
Did your parents push you to writing, or did you just come naturally to both?
No, if anything, when we got a little bit older, they pushed us out the door to be more physically active, because we were the kids that during recess would be sitting there reading, Lord of the Rings or something, instead of playing on the playground. So it just was one of those things that we always loved.
Now, what is this, the Blacklist?
So the Blacklist is a list that comes out every year that is voted on by studio executives, producers, agents, readers in Hollywood, the people, sort of the inner core of people that read screenplays, that vote on the best screenplays that haven't been produced that year. And of the past, I want to say 7 years of the Blacklist, and of the past 7 years of the Academy Awards, I believe 10 out of 13 best screenplay winners were named at the top of the Blacklist. And so this year we were named, I guess it's telling you right there,
go ahead,
towards the top of the Blacklist for this Carl Sagan Golden Record script. And that has led to a lot of interest in us, and has led to the TV deal and this feature film pitch that we sold to Fox about a month ago as well.
You just mentioned Fox. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay,
no, I can talk about who we sold it to.
Yeah, please. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so we sold a feature film pitch that, speaking of William Goldman, is sort of our Princess Bride, which is one of our favorite films growing up, which I can't say really what the idea is, but it was an original idea that we sold to Fox Studios 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, and we're currently writing now.
And that's going to be a TV show?
That's going to be hopefully like a big franchise summer blockbuster series of movies, I hope.
So remember,
Fingers
everybody,
crossed.
if you see Jordan Kandell's name, as they're flicking through when you're looking at a movie, he's the guy right here. Go ahead, let's look at some of the other stuff.
So I guess we're now looking at some of the journalism work that we've done. This is an article Aaron wrote for Hana Ho at the end of last year on, now I'm forgetting his name. He's Chad Owens. He's a football player from Hawaii who is the most famous and successful football player in the Canadian Football League.
Correct. And plays for the Toronto
Argonauts.
And
a very dynamic, fascinating, inspiring guy with his story. So that was a great story Aaron wrote, and yeah, I guess that's some of the journalism work that we do on the side.
The work that you did in journalism, was it a prelude to understanding how to do screenplays, or was it just a job?
No, I mean, the journalism came in years after we were writing screenplays, but I do believe that the journalism helped some of our process in screenwriting, and the screenwriting hand in hand helped some of our journalism work. They're very different fields. You could spend your entire life, and many people do and should, pursuing journalism and being a great journalist. And I think that I am a much better screenwriter than journalist, because that's where I focus my attention. And if I wanted to be a better journalist, I would have to write. I would have to work at it for years and years and write more and more. Yeah. I'm still learning for sure in both fields. But as far as journalism goes, I think that helped the research and the work that went into this Carl Sagan script, because we ended up taking the skills that we had been learning in our journalism work and applying it to our research and our writing of the Carl Sagan script to bring authenticity and accuracy and truth to that script.
We always want to ask everybody on this show, what is their worst and their best experience of working in the screenwriting industry? Can you describe the best first? What was the thing that made you jump to the sky with joy?
I'll talk about one of the simultaneous best and worst, because they happened literally within the same 5 minutes or so, which is when we sold this original pitch to Fox about 2 months ago. Because at the same time, we were being courted by Pixar to move our entire lives and families to Emeryville outside of San Francisco, where Pixar's campus is, and work potentially on the director of Brave's next project, which they're working on now. And it was an assignment, and they were scheduled to fly us up for the job interview on Monday, and we'd gone through several job interviews over the phone that week, and we didn't know if we were going to get the job, but it was looking like it was ours to lose at the moment. And Friday morning, we took this pitch in, and it kind of happened in a random way to Fox Studios, and they made us an offer that was pretty hard to refuse. They told us in the room they were going to buy it, and before we got to our car, they were making us the offer. And at the same time, Pixar had sent over this top secret script, which I cannot talk about, for us to review in preparation for this meeting on Monday. So we had to decide if we were going to accept Fox's offer, which would we would be unable to work at Pixar, or if we were going to accept Pixar's offer, which would mean we couldn't accept Fox's offer on our original project that was our baby we had hatched.
So what did you end up
doing? We were holding Fox off for an hour and saying, "Oh, we're at lunch. We can't. The guys are unreachable." We had our agents saying that while we drove to get this script that had just been delivered to where we were staying, and look at it and decide if we were going to sacrifice the lamb of our, sort of our original child at the altar of Pixar, which has always been one of our, goals and dreams, is to work for Pixar. And it was too good of an offer to write our own original project to refuse, but it was a bittersweet sort of choice because we couldn't work for this company that we'd been dreaming about working for years. So it was simultaneously one of the best and sort of worst moments of my life, because it was a very tough call.
That sounds exciting enough that it could be a movie in itself, probably. Just the idea of how you navigate through the yeses and the nos and the pitches, and they're pulling you one way, and then, did you and Aaron agree the whole time of which way to go, or did you guys have to sit down and say, I want Pixar and I want...
It was a debate, yeah. We were conflicted about it. For sure.
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. I think the storyline behind what you guys have done and gone to the extent that you had to go to develop your business, and I call your screenwriting a business, if I may.
Yeah.
It's fascinating because a lot of people in Hawaii don't have an idea of what it takes to become a Hollywood screenwriter, obviously.
Sure.
And I think you've really given them a great idea on how to do it. What I also want to accentuate to our viewers is that the efforts that you put in are now coming to fruition. I mean, you are now going to, I hope, reap the rewards, big money, fame, success, all those things. Is that what you were looking for? Or was just the idea of becoming successful?
I don't even think it was the idea of becoming successful. 9 years ago, coming up on 9 years ago, we sat down and sort of wrote our Jerry Maguire mission statement. Not to sound cheesy, but there were 3 goals, and one was to sell a movie, one was to have a movie made, and the third was to have a movie made that we were proud of. And we know that that third one is the hardest goal because it's somewhat out of your control. There's so many people involved, as I said, in making a movie. You never know how it's going to turn out. But to us, it was more about doing something that we loved, and it was never a choice of whether we were going to do it or not. If I wasn't successful financially, I would still be writing because I haven't been successful financially up until, I'd say, 2-3 months ago.
Right.
Potentially. I mean, I'd sold stuff and I was able to sustain my career and my living for a few years, but I had to adjust my lifestyle to be sustainable for, the modicum of success that I had gotten to. So to me, it's more the school of, and I follow, and one of the journalist articles we wrote for Hanho last year was about Joseph Campbell's wife, who's an inspiring person. Joseph Campbell was a famous mythologist who inspired Star Wars and many, many storytellers and screenwriters around the world by taking all of the myths of the world and uniting them by what's the common element to all of the Greek mythology, Native American mythology, so forth. And it's, this idea of the hero's journey. And on the hero's journey, you start off not knowing where you're going. You start off reluctant and, just you're not a hero, you're a regular person. And you have to face infinite obstacles and challenges on the path to getting that brass ring, to getting that success, to becoming the Luke Skywalker, the hero. And the key to keeping you on that path of the hero's journey is following your bliss. And so the hardest part, I think, is figuring out what your bliss is in life at any age. You don't have to be coming out of college. You don't have to be a kid. I think most people is, what is the thing that you're passionate about? It could be a person. It could be community service. It could be anything, fishing, whatever it is. Find that bliss and follow it. And don't let anyone ever shake you off of what that bliss is. You just have to pursue it no matter what, no matter the obstacles. And if you do, eventually, doors will open. That's what I believe, and that's why I do it. I wanted to be a storyteller, and if I didn't make a dime from it, I would continue to do it as long as I could.
I couldn't have put it better, Jordan, because I teach, structure, discipline, support, and the most important is passion.
Yeah.
And if you do have passion for your work, it really, it's working for nothing, basically. You can get paid for it, but yet you would do it for nothing because that's what you enjoy doing.
If you don't have passion, I don't know why you should, you should certainly not be a screenwriter, because it's the only thing for years that will fuel you. Because it is the most unstable financially and everything career that I could think of. If you want stability, if you want the ideas of success, work a job that's 9 to 5 that pays you insurance and all of those things that many people want and need in their life. If you want to be a storyteller or a creative person or anything, only do it if you're passionate, because it is hard and it's not easy. And my success today was hard fought.
It's obvious. It's just fascinating to hear how 2 brothers can do what you have done in this period of time, and you're still very, very, you're happy about the work. It's not about the money. It's the work that you're happy about, and I think that's great. We have to take a short break,
Sure.
And then we'll continue. My name is Seymour Kazimirski. We're on Seymour's World at ThinkTech Hawaii.
I'm Jake Fidel. That's Sharon Moriwaki of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. And every Wednesday we have Hawaii, the state of clean energy. We've been doing it for some time now, and we have some fantastic guests on there, unbelievable guests who give us insight into what is going on in a very complex, sometimes very confusing, sometimes very disappointing area of progress in the state. So we love doing this. We love meeting them. We love talking to them. We love having their ideas out on the table. So maybe, just maybe, we can all make some sense of what's going on. Sharon, what do you think?
I think that's absolutely correct. We enjoy ourselves meeting with all these people and hearing about the energy and the state of clean energy, and hopefully we advance clean energy for the state. So it's terrific. Join us.
Okay, it's every Wednesday. Okay, Wednesday is Energy Day. Every Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. Hawaii, the state of clean energy, here on ThinkTech Hawaii. We'll see you there.
Welcome back to Seymour's World. I'm Seymour Kazimirski. Our guest today is Jordan Kandell. He and his brother Aaron have become very, very famous. I know you don't think so, Jordan, but
I think so.
Very famous screenwriters in Hollywood, and a matter of fact, on the blacklist, they are listed at the top or close to the top of
top
the most
10
of the most aspiring screenwriters. He's a very humble guy, so I have to help him push himself up a little bit. Let's talk about Hawaii. Is there work in Hawaii for screenwriters?
Yes. Well, the great part about being a writer is you can work anywhere. We live and work and write here, and then we go to LA for the business side of what we have to do, taking meetings with producers and studios that we work with, and setting up and selling things. I think that there is a local community of filmmakers here, and there is a small industry. You can write and direct and create your own films here, for sure. And there have been some successful ones, like the Huamana, I think is the most successful red box release that they've had ever in Hawaii, and it was a local production. And there's several other examples, but it is it's a much more sort of smaller provincial thing. If you want to have your story seen on a bigger scale, you may have to find yourself in LA, and we lived there for many years.
And your families, are they here with you, or they're in LA?
Families are here.
So the families are here. So this is home for you.
This is home.
And you go to do business in LA. That's your office, basically.
Yeah, and we put the time in. After college, we moved back to LA for several years, 3 years, I think. And you have to establish yourself, whether it's acting, writing, in the film industry, directing, screenwriting, there to make the connections, because that's where the industry is. I mean, it's the epicenter of most film, at least a certain kind of film. If you want to be an independent filmmaker, writer, director, you can do it anywhere. And with technology today, more and more, that's accessible to most people. So you don't have to follow the traditional model or path. I'd say we're probably followed the more traditional path of becoming a screenwriter for feature, but you don't have to. It's just, it depends on the type of stories you want to tell. If you want to tell smaller stories about, the local community, or about, that thing, by all means, go ahead and make your story here. If you want to tell stories about, Carl Sagan and the Golden Record in the 70s, you may not be making that movie in Hawaii.
Right. Is there, in business, traditional businesses, and although yours is a traditional business in the sense of profit and losses and things like that, we have competition. You mentioned earlier that there's literally thousands of screenplays that are being evaluated all the time. Is there a competitive issue with other screenwriters? Like, for instance, if somebody wants to sell soap to a store, there are several brands of soap, and the store has to decide which one they want.
Yeah.
How do you do it in the screenwriting business?
I don't ever feel directly personally competitive with screenwriters, because usually I'm not in rooms with other screenwriters. But to become a successful screenwriter, the competition that you're up against is incredibly steep. There's, if you're an aspiring screenwriter, the best thing that you could apply to get yourself recognized from Hawaii and anywhere in the world is called the Nichols Screenwriting Fellowship, and it's the Academy Award sponsored screenwriting competition that if you haven't made more than, I forget what it is, $15,000 as a professional screenwriter, you can submit your screenplay to. It's held every year. The award is about like $35,000. There's 5 or 10 winners, I forget. But there's 10,000 or more submissions every year that get whittled down to 5 or 10. I think that's 0.001%, or I'm a writer, not a mathematician. It's extremely small statistically, but that is a way of getting yourself recognized. In my most direct competition I face is there's a thing that's developed in the past few years since the last writer's strike called sweepstakes pitching, where we got a top secret big tentpole project I can't name for Warner Brothers last year that we wrote, that we had to beat 12 other writers who I never met, I never talked to, I had no connection with, but that were pitching on the same assignment. And it took 4 months of free work and endless, conversations up and down the chain of command, different executives at different levels, different producers at Warner Brothers, to win that job, beating out 12 others. Wow. So it's an incredibly competitive field. And the only way to succeed is to follow the story you're passionate about and make sure you tell it with as much truth and passion and skill as you can, because that's how you rise above the literal mountain of other scripts that are being flooded. Executives, anyone who's going to read your script, executives, producers, they're being flooded by hundreds, if not thousands, of scripts every year. You walk into meetings and there are literally piles on their desks of screenplays, and that's what I see when I go into meetings. That's my competition, and I have to make sure my work, my story, is better than those to get read even, and for them to even make the choice if they want to make it.
It's strange because I'm smiling as you're saying this because it's exactly the same in the business world when you're looking for funding.
Yep.
And you have to have a funding proposal, and you have to have a good business plan, and you have a very short time frame because the attention span of whomever is listening to your funding proposal is very, very short. So in essence, you're talking about funding a project or funding a business that you want, and he's got 10 or 15 or 20 other groups waiting before you and after you to do the same thing. So it's a business like everything else. And for all of you entrepreneurs out there, what Jordan is telling you is that basically every time you want to become competitive, any time that you want to become successful, it's again, all the work and effort has to be put in. You have to take the risks that are necessary to go forward. Jordan, let's talk a little bit about outside your business.
Sure.
You live in Hawaii. Do you have any hobbies? Anything that are you a surfer? What do you like doing?
I do surf. I'm a water baby, so anything in the water, seeing films, and I have a very young daughter, so being a dad most recently is consuming my free time. I would say that the one sort of downside of recent success is lack of free time to pursue it. Before I was working so hard just to get to the top of the mountain, and now that I'm close to or standing higher up the mountain, I have to continue to work so hard just to, stay on top of the amount of work I have. So I'm having less free time these days. My life is pretty much consumed by my work, but I'm passionate and love my work, so.
What about, are you building an organization around you? I'm thinking of it from a business perspective, so that you do have free time to be with your family.
Yeah, that's evolving. We have our own corporation, our own business that's Twin Ink Inc.
Twin Ink Inc. Okay.
INK. Eventually we're hoping to sort of build a group of other writers and collaborators who, could field ideas and projects that we don't have time for, that maybe somebody else, we could help produce and become producers and have other writers field. But I believe, to be a successful screenwriter, I'm gonna have to be on my game and be working really hard as long as I want to do it.
All right, great. And for aspiring screenwriters, we only have a minute left.
Sure.
For aspiring screenwriters, what do you think is everybody is listening to this show or watching the show and they're saying, wow, this sounds like, he put 9 years in and he's gotten there, and we're going to see films with your name on it and all that stuff. But what is the absolute requirement that you see for anybody who wants to be in this business?
Passion and persistence. If you want to do it, you've got to align your entire life and everything in it towards realizing that goal. And if you don't, you're gonna hit obstacles and challenges that will shake you off that course. You know, the best advice I ever was given by my first screenwriting professor, who was, had one movie made and now was teaching and was somewhat bitter about it, but he said, it's a war of attrition. To make it, you have to beat all the other people that don't, that drop out, that burn out, that give up. And so if you want to be a writer, you have to be persistent. You have to never give up, and then you also have to be passionate about the work. Because the only thing that will lead to success that I feel is, I don't think I'm the best writer, the most naturally talented, innately gifted writer that I even know, or that has by any means ever lived. I think that I'm one of the hardest working writers I know. I write 13, 14 hours sometimes a day, every day. I take maybe one day off a week, maybe not this week. It depends. I gotta stay at it all the time to be successful. And it's about making sure that what story you find, you're so passionate about that you'll be willing to pursue it for years, and that you will make sure you write it so that it's better than the 10,000 other screenplays that are ahead of you, I'm telling you, they're there. They exist. You'll see them physically. You have to make your work better than that. Not just like whatever you just saw in the movie and slightly better. You have to make it so much better to get noticed.
Excellent, Jordan. Excellent advice, not just in the screenwriting business, but in almost any business. We can take that advice to the bank. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure, an absolute pleasure, to see the kid that I remember tutoring my son, to be able to talk the way you talk today is just fabulous. Absolutely fabulous to see your growth. It's wonderful. I want to thank you all for watching Seymour's World today. We will be back next Tuesday at 1 o'clock. My name is Seymour Kazimirski. Aloha.